Right, so this video, I'll just jump straight into it. This one is more about what I've learned from avoiding arguments on the calls at all cost. And it's so, like, it sounds self-explanatory, but is very hard to do when you're not used to doing it over and over again, and realizing that the person doesn't really want to argue with you, they just want to hear themselves talk. So I learned that the hard way. And to be honest, I mean, I'll start with a frame. This is the truth, that I'm not a very argumentative person. I actually am more conflict adverse. I avoid sort of confrontational situations, not because I want to lose or I feel as though the person is right, but simply because I just don't like, I don't like my mental state fluctuating and putting that control in that person's hands. Like, when people get me to a point where my blood pressure and my heart rate starts to go up, I just start to feel uneasy by myself. It's just like, how did I let them do that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that indirectly gives them a one-up, and that's what annoys me. So I avoid conflicts at all costs. I'm more of a calm, agreeable person for the most part. I am disagreeable at times, but for the most part, yeah, I just like keeping my cool. But what I'm trying to get at, what I learned from this, and I'll give you an example before I actually go into talking about the point here. But excuse me, breathing out of control as well. I literally just had to run to do something. But anyways, I was on a call once, a guy named Ed. I'll say his name because why not? A guy named Ed, right? And the aim of the call was to advise him that it might be best to start looking at your energy contract, so gas and electric, now, as opposed to waiting until his renewal comes up, which at the time I think was in about 2 years. So what I had explained was the current circumstances that were going on in the world at that point in time. So this was a while ago, and at the time it was around the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and that was just having a crazy impact on the energy market. And it was common knowledge, or at least I thought it was common knowledge, that it was best to start looking at contract and anything energy related at that point in time, because there was going to be a huge impact on the market. Now, Ed was of the understanding that there was no point, and his reasoning was that by looking now and interfering and sort of locking yourself into a contract that's later down the line is gonna basically mean that he's paying higher prices than currently. And he had his reasons for it. Now, what my counter argument was, and this is where I made the problem, even I said it was a counter argument, rather than advising him on why that's probably not the best idea, I sort of went at it in an approach that I know what the facts are, and I'm going to tell you, and you should listen. And that's where I went wrong at the time. This is when I was pretty new to it. So I told him some good points. I had mentioned that, listen, if you were to go on holiday, for example, right, you wouldn't leave it to last minute, would you? And there's a very obvious reason for it. The reason why is because the closer you get to the date of departure, in this case, the closer you get to the renewal date, the higher the prices can possibly be. And that's because the suppliers have no obligation to drop those prices, and they know that because you're approaching your renewal and you have no other choice, that they can and will in fact bump up those prices. You got nowhere else to go. And it's the same with going on holiday. So like, it's either you take the price or you don't, and you stay at home. So I explained it like that. Now here's where the conflict started to come in. He had completely just disregarded what I had said. I mean, like, maybe I said it in a bad way, in which it didn't come across the way I wanted it to. It was still early days, so that's highly possible. Now let me shut this window. That's highly possible. All right. But he just wanted to argue. And I realized that later on. It's just like, whatever point I would make of whatever sort of validity it had, like I even mentioned that, listen, we rely on getting our energy from other countries. It's like, it's a known fact. You know, we've got the North Sea, a decent part of it comes from there, but for the rest of it, it's renewables, solar farms, which is not a lot, and then energy coming from the Middle East, USA, and then not Russia directly, but all of the countries that buy from Russia, such as Norway and all of them sort of places. Now, I could have explained it into a kingdom comes. Like, I could have told him anything I want, like anything that was factual within the realms of possibility, to convince this guy that it's probably in your best interest to at least look now. Not even if you're going to lock in, but at least have a glance at it. Like, you lose nothing doing so. And I realized he just wanted to argue. So what I learned whilst I was on the call, and it's good that I quickly adapted to it, was that rather than trying to change his mind and convince him that I was right, you know, the old saying, a man forced against his opinion is of the same opinion still. A man forced against his will is of the same opinion still. That's it, right? And it's true. So he wanted to be right. So what I learned in hindsight was to just let him talk. And I realized that when the call ended, it's just like he just wanted to talk. And there's a chance that I had nothing to even do with that. Like, maybe he just had an argument with his wife, or he just came back from the doctor's office and he heard bad news, or he literally just stubbed his toe on the fucking door frame. Like, these are things that could easily have possibly happened, and I'll have no idea. So that could have just led him into that call with a negative frame, just, you know, sort of bad mindset, and just pissed off. And that's highly possible. Like, we've all had them sort of days as well. So I just let him talk, and the more I let him talk, I realized that he wasn't mad at me directly, and then he wasn't oblivious to the facts that I was telling him. He just wanted to be listened to, and he just wanted for me to actually stop trying to sell him something and just listen. So I let him talk, and the more I let him talk, as you can imagine, the more he calmed down. And when he calmed down, he went from being at the emotional state, and you can never convince someone. You know, people are emotional creatures. Like, you can't convince them on emotion when they're emotional. Like, you have to wait until their emotions calm down, and then you can resort back to logic. So I learned that. So he eventually calmed down. And once he had calmed down, and these are main points I took from How to Win Friends and Influence indirectly, and then I only directly realized that it was exactly what I was talking about when I came back to read the book. It's like, rather than me trying to persuade him that I was right, it was more about finding a bit of common ground. So the way I got him to open up was by leading him into yes questions. So things where it would be obvious that he would say yes to, and eventually that built a bit more rapport between us and a bit more trust. So I'd say things like, listen, you know, if the prices, hypothetically, if we were both wrong and the prices went down as of right now, however, later down the line they ended up going up, you know, wouldn't you agree that it would make sense to at least look now, just to be aware of your options, you know, in case it did go up? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, of course. He's like, you know, there's no point in not doing it, even if you're not even going to lock in. So I'm like, yeah, we can agree with that. I said, wouldn't you agree that if we do look at prices further down the line, it would make a bit more sense for the church? It was a church in this case. It would make a bit more sense for the church. And they had multiple sites. So it's not just one place he's dealing with. He manages multiple. So it's like he had a higher sense of responsibility when it actually come to making a decision. I said, wouldn't you agree that it makes a bit more sense to know what you're going to pay at that point in time, so that you do have the budget security, so that you know exactly what your outgoings are going to be, so that you can prioritize the things that are important. You know, maybe you want to change a light bulb, maybe you want to run a new service and it means hiring an extra set of staff. He said, yeah. So I'm like, yes, cool, we can agree to that. And then once I got him agreeing to things, small, minute things, he subconsciously resorted back to my sort of frame. So he was better understanding of the information I had given him. And the point of me talking about all of this was, avoid arguments at all costs. Like, avoid it like the plague. Like, it doesn't help either party. The thing is, in times where I have found myself arguing with an ex-girlfriend, for example, that was like one of the rare times I actually found myself like raise my voice. Like it scared me, you know what I mean? One of my friends will know exactly what I'm talking about. But in times where you do resort to arguments, talking to you specifically, Josiah, you might feel better in that moment by just letting it off, feeling that you're right. But eventually down the line, it just has more negatives than it has positives. It's just like neither party come away learning something from the other. It's like now the other person hates you, so good luck trying to convince them of anything ever again. And it's like you limit what you're able to receive in terms of information simply because it closes you off from realizing what other realities and possibilities there could be. It gets you set in your ways, and when you're set in your ways, how are you going to learn? So yeah, this is more of a reminder to myself, because obviously when you deal with a lot of objections on the phones, like I have been recently, I've been making a few calls over the last weekend just to get myself ready for the, just to sort of warm up the engine, ready for the week. And because it had been a minute since I had made these calls, like I forgot that, you're gonna have people that just want to argue with you. And I found myself like sort of like just twitching, like just constantly uneasy, because like the arguments were just getting to me in the sense that it's like, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? Like, can't we just have a cordial, casual conversation? If we don't want to agree to it, we don't want to agree to it, but we don't need to argue. So yeah, if there's anything to remember that, Josiah.